The balance of class for today is to get one step past the theme and start thinking about what might be some interesting ways, some really fun for you as the person taking us through this stuff, but also maybe fun or challenging or whatever for your participants, your audiences, your publics, plural. Okay? So let's go through what the sort of the basic prototype outline for Interp looks like. Anchoring it on the theme statement, and then elaborating, unpacking, looking at from different perspectives through each of the thematic points or chunks of content that are sort of tied together by that theme. Okay? So we're going to have 5 major parts. We're going to informally call part 0, so to speak. Now I know that pre-gaming is something different to college students. But for the purposes of interpretation, pre-game is all of the prep. It's whatever you need to do that day. You have done the work of developing the content. You have a couple of different themes to kick things off. You can pick which one you like. You have a bunch of content to different modes or ways of expressing stuff. Some might be interactive, some might be more didactic or passive or whatever. This is preparing you mentally, physically, whatever. This is preparing the space, making sure it's safe to take visitors of varying mobility, capabilities, or restrictions on that hike, that cave tour or boat tour, whatever it is. Okay? Make sure everything is good to go. That when something goes wrong, it's not a question of if, it's a question of when, we are prepared for it. Then we have every paper you've ever written. You got the introduction, part of which is the theme. The most important of which is the theme. The most visible of which is the theme. Okay? So the introduction is going to be introducing yourself to the group. It's going to be collecting either actively or reflectively some kind of an introduction so you understand who is with you today. It's a bunch of school kids. Is it a bunch of octogenarians in their 9th decade? Is it somebody in between? Is it a whole bunch of families? Is it a school group? Is it a bunch of college students? Is it somebody else? We need to know that stuff because that's going to be pretty important for figuring out, okay, this game, not inappropriate for a bunch of 80-year-olds. This slideshow, not super effective for a bunch of 3rd graders. Okay? And we're including and excluding or discluding various chunks of content in there. So, I'm going to refer to these the chunks of content interchangeably as thematic points. Each thematic point is one chunk of content. It's one 5-minute stop on your interpretive hike. It's one interactive activity or game. It's one page in the Junior Ranger guidebook that talks about its own little subtopic underneath your topic and theme. Okay? Of course, we come to a graceful landing. You gotta land the plane and tie back to the theme. Ask folks if it's appropriate, what did you learn today? Or maybe how might you think differently at the end of this thing versus before you came in? If we're talking about stuff that's really important that actually matters, not just like relaying information, not just filling time, then hopefully we hear some interesting answers on that. One of the coolest experiences you can have as an interpreter, one of the most rewarding things, is taking folks through a difficult, a challenging, a socially or morally or ethically loaded topic, something that's not easy or cheap to talk about. Like the Holocaust, for example. Have you guys ever been to the Holocaust Museum in DC? Whew, man, that will age you like a decade in an afternoon. It's wild. But one of the coolest experiences you can have as an interpreter is connecting with people in a real way. Not just being like a public speaker blasting content at people. Nothing parasocial like a YouTuber or streamer or a Twitch person. But like actually meaningfully getting beyond all the walls that we put up, all of our distractions and all that stuff, and really connecting with somebody over a hard topic. And they respond to you in this conclusion section of, you got me thinking about this person that is in my life, and I see something of what you're talking about in my dynamic with them. Good, bad, ugly? Or when you were talking about how this particular forest ecosystem works like a beehive. I grew up on a farm and we kept apiaries for all of the farms around us, and so I was in my feelings when you were talking about the beehive. Even though you weren't really talking about a beehive, it was just a metaphor for how this ecosystem works. It's like, oh yeah, I got through to that one. Like they were really present, they were thinking about it, they were here for it. Okay? And then after that is the post-game. Military, this might be referred to as after action. It's a chance for you to disengage, to go to the bathroom, to recharge your battery if you spend a lot of energy to get in front of people and talk to people. So after I'm done teaching each day for a couple of hours at a stretch, I'll go into my office and I'll turn off the lights and I won't do anything for a little while, because that's what I need to do to recharge my battery so that I don't like bite somebody's head off because I'm exhausted mentally, maybe not outwardly or visibly or physically, but just like I'm spent, you know? It's a lot of work. For some of us, it feels like very intense work to be up in front of a group of people and stuff like that. Okay? So the after action is your chance to catch your breath, but also to ask some important questions. How did I do? What did I do well? What would I like to change or improve, or just even just modify for next time to keep it fresh? Not that I did it badly, but I'm kind of sick of talking about X in Y kind of a way. Maybe I'll swap in a game instead of that, like, chat or whatever the different modality is. Okay? So, 5-part outline. Pre-game, intro, including the theme. Your content or thematic points. Okay. Freeman Tilden, an old dead guy who wrote the Bible on interpretation as a first-generation profession about 80 years ago. Okay. Suggested something on the order of not overwhelming people, but not leaving them too thirsty for more. Something on the order of 5 to 7 thematic points. Okay. There's a reason that a lot of Junior Ranger guidebooks are between 15 and 20 pages long. If you figure 2 pages per thematic point, and like a couple of pages for front matter and back matter, like the introduction and, index, not that a Junior Ranger guidebooks would have an index, but that's back matter book. This is about right. So if you have 5 to 7, if you have time and space and energy for 5 to 7, then let's have, how many would you like to have to draw on to fill up those 5 to 7 slots. What seems like a good number to have available mentally to you and prepared so that you can pick your favorite 5 for that particular group's dynamic, their age, their energy, their investment, their focus, whatever, their mobility limitations. What seems like a good number of thematic points to just kind of have in your back pocket? You can pick 5 as you go. Anybody? What do you think? No wrong answers. Okay. If 5 to 7 done, available. For a professional interpreter, working in a place like Yosemite National Park, leading a hike, a guided hike, from a visitor center to some green spaces not right next to the visitor center, like getting out into the valley just a little bit, but on foot, so not too far. You might have as many as 30 or 40 different things that they could say. 30 or 40 different stops along the way, so that in a single day of, let's say, 6 guided hikes, in your 8-hour shift, you have 6 one-hour guided hikes, plus the pregame and after action around each of those for 8 hours instead of 6 of actual engagement. You could do all 6 of those, and none of them have anything, or none of them have any overlap with the others in terms of the actual thematic points that you took that one group of folks on. So hike 1 gets topics 1 through 6, or thematic points 1 through 6. Hike number 2 gets thematic points or chunks of content 7 through 12, and so on and so forth. And some of them get 8, some of them get 4, some of them get 5 or 6 or 7. And so you have a lot of rounds in the magazine. It's not a clip, it's in the magazine. At least in modern use. So that it's fresh for you. Okay? In, like, park, 30 or 40 or 50, really? Really, really? Yeah. How many of you guys are into Pokemon? Or Digimon? Or any of the gotta catch 'em alls? Okay. How many of those are there?
There's gotta be like a million Digimon.
Hundreds of them, right? Several hundred at this point. Pushing 1,000 just in the Pokemon line, I believe. So, you know, let's say your interpretive hike is about Pokemon, just like some bizarre nerd national park has a visitor center full of anime, and one of your guided hikes is about Pokemon. If you're always talking about Pikachu every single hike, that's not going to be fun for you anymore, right? And the passion that you have for Pokemon that has you conversant enough, very familiar enough with 40 or 50 of them, gets sapped away because you're just talking about fucking Pikachu again and sharing that same story about Pikachu's voice actor, and it's just like, okay, this is the grind. It doesn't have to be that way. And if you're talking about stuff that you are genuinely passionate about, 30 to 50 different interesting things about that, that's not a big lift for you. This is something you're passionate about, right? You already know those 30 to 50 things. It's just a question of, you know, thinking about, you know, what's the over-under on talking about evolutions of these 5 versus not the evolution, but the ecosystems that these other 7 are a part of, and how does that relate to where you're standing right now on this hike, etc. Okay? So, don't worry, in this class, I'm never gonna lock you guys in the room and say nobody gets out until you have a list of 50 different ways to talk about the idea captured by your theme. I'm just stating that if we're doing this right, we're talking about things that matter to us and that we understand why they can matter to lots of other people, and that passion drives big amounts of content. Okay? Cool. Very cool. So, in our pregame, in your notes, go ahead and pull out a fresh sheet of paper. Title that sheet of paper, Interpretive Outline. And on the first line, we'll start with pregame. And pregame is usually anywhere from like 3 to 15 minutes of very structured, very intentional time. So pregame, parentheses, 3 to 15 minutes. Pregame. First, we want to prepare the materials, whatever stuff that we need to use. In station-based interpretation, where you're like planted at a spot and people are just like wandering by, like if you've ever been to St. Louis Zoo or Shedd Aquarium and stuff like that, there's a bunch of fixed emplacement spots because you can't move where the animal enclosures or the aquatic enclosures are. And they might have interpretive staff like stationed there, station interpretation. So you want to make sure that that place is ready to go. Or whatever physical materials. It's very common to see interpreters with a backpack full of stuff, exhibits, things that the people can touch and hold and pass around or interact with. Materials for the games. Games are full of things like tokens, whatever the tokens might be, whether they're chess pieces or, if you hate your wallet, Warhammer 40K Titan models for thousands of dollars, or like games have physical objects called tokens that can manipulate and all that. We'll get into games later. We're going to place or space. So before you take folks on an interpretive hike, you got to walk that whole hike. Make sure there are no downed trees from the night before. Make sure there are no downed power lines, no dead or rabid animals like right there on the trail that you're about to bring a bunch of people unfamiliar with this local ecosystem into. Okay. Lastly, and just as importantly, prep yourself. So our materials, good to go. We've packed and checked our first aid kit to make sure that everything is in there. We have prepared the space. We've hiked the trail first thing in the morning to make sure there's no rock fall or wind throw trees, no widowmakers, nothing like that. And right before we step out in front of people, take a minute to gather ourselves. And whatever kind of day you're having, it's not anybody else's fault. So if got a flat this morning or had a pretty intense fellowship with a significant other or partner, or your a couple of your many foster animals are sick and stressing you out, or cat planted her anus on your face to wake you up this morning at 4:30 because she was hungry. Maybe some of us can relate. Can we get an F in chat for cat owners like me? I've seen things. Anyway, whatever that is, it's not that you're stuffing it down and you'll deal with it later. It's that You need to be your full and authentic self with people who are trusting you with their time and their safety as the interpretive guide. So you got to be fully present. So it's not stuffing that stuff down, it's acknowledging it and saying, man, I am having a shitty morning. I need to do whatever I need to do right now to gather my thoughts and be ready to not be a shitty interpreter, even though I'm having a shitty morning. Cool? So that's a very personal thing, and each of you gets to decide exactly what that looks like. Preparing materials, preparing the place and the space, safety checks, electricity checks, for places that have electronics, making sure like Windows isn't installing an update for this looping video that you need to be playing, or whatever. This prepare self step can be just one big deep breath, slow breath in and out as you are walking out. If that's all you have time for, if that's all you need. Other days, it's I need a cold glass of water. For famous operatic tenor Luciano Pavarotti, who was not super excited about performing in front of audiences, and he was a world-renowned opera singer, take a shot of whiskey each time. I'm not advocating that you drink on the job. There are real problems associated with that, especially more in something like interpretation where you're working directly with people and you are responsible for their safety versus standing up on a stage and, being the guy or the lady that's singing for 3-4 hours. Okay? Have you guys ever seen the movie Schindler's List? Ever see Schindler's List? It's an older movie. It's about Nazi concentration camps and the extermination of 6 million Jews and other politically undesirable people in the eyes of the Third Reich. But the music for that movie is famous. And it is led by concert string players, so violin, viola, a guy named Isaac Perlman. I think that's how you spell his name. I mean, this guy's bigger than Saza, bigger than Michael Jackson. Like, multiple generations understand that this is one of the best violin performers in history. The way that he prepares himself, or prepared himself back in the 80s and 90s and so forth, was to pray. Wasn't to look over his sheet music. He'd put in the hours, all by heart, virtuoso level violinist. He'd pray. Because for him, getting out in front of people and producing a performance at a world level is not an expression of technical and professional expertise and practice. It's a spiritual experience for somebody at that level. Does that make sense? So, whether or not you believe in the flying spaghetti monster or the Abrahamic God or, the Greek pantheon, whatever, ask yourself, what do I need to be hunted? Or, as we learned on summer camp this past summer, locked in? Instead of just put the fries in the bag. Okay? You are spending people's irrecoverable time every time you do interpretation with them. So, whatever that looks like. Moment of quiet, tall glass of ice water, high protein snack, whatever your thing is, right? Do that. And budget time for it, because the interp is not going to be as good otherwise. This is a real requirement for this class. Not to pray specifically, but to do something to prep yourself. Alright? So, these are the main things. And materials, we'll get into some super boring details like safety kit, interp items, program eval items. If you've ever filled out like a 1 or 2 question little postcard size thing at a national park on interpretation or your hike or whatever, those are called GIPRAs. And those scores are like, how satisfied were you with this fill in the blank. That's program evaluation. It's trying to figure out, how is this actually going from the visitor's perspective versus how do we think it's going. Okay? These, not a big deal. All right. Then the actual introduction. So, our introduction is going to start with not the theme, but a call to attention. We refer to this as the hook. That call to attention could be lots of different things. It's just something unusual, a little bit unexpected, to snap people out of looking at their screens while they're walking and stepping on people. Help people understand that there's anything more going on in this time and spot than just, I need to find the bathrooms, or I need to just get my tickets for this thing, right? It'll be somebody not in costume, but in period authentic clothing, demonstrating tools. Anybody been to Colonial Williamsburg out east? Popular field trip thing for elementary school kids east of the Mississippi. Colonial Williamsburg is a living history interpretation site where you see people in 1700s era clothing doing things like the guy who worked as the armorer, the musket maker, basically disassembled and reassembled the same musket a couple of times a day for like 35 years. So that outfit is a hook. You're walking around Colonial Williamsburg with your corn dog in one hand and your sunburn on your face, and you're like, well, now what? I wonder where the bathroom is. And then you see a guy in like stockings. In the 1700s, men wore stockings and the women were glad of it. I'm kidding. And he's taking apart a gun, and it's like, what is going on here? That's the hook. Just the fact of his presence, or her presence. And it is some kind of stimulus. In an example we'll see here at some point, a world-class interpreter named Shelton Johnson at Yosemite National Park starts his interpretive hike. He gathers attention by playing a wooden flute, a recorder, which was a period-accurate musical instrument that the post-Civil War cavalrymen that he is portraying could have in his saddlebag to just sort of spend time in camp before the era of the Black Mirror, the smartphone. Okay? So he just starts playing that. Like, he doesn't say a word, but he's in period-accurate clothing, walks outside of the visitor center, and just starts playing a song. And people are like walking by, and they just stop to listen for a sec. Most of them don't know that he's about to lead people on a hike. And so the hook is kind of the invitation. Hey, I'm about to do something here, and you're welcome to join if you want to. So, there's the hook. There's the introduce self. There is the set expectations. Specifically including safety considerations. And now that we are in front of people, from the moment we start the introduction, the second after we finish prepping self, now we need to give people a very clear sense of, right now we're in the introduction part, and I'm about to start a guided hike, but we're not there yet. And soon we will be on the guided hike. So now that I'm done with the introduction, let's transition to hiking. People have no idea what you're on about, no idea what to expect. So you have to very carefully and visibly and audibly do transitions. So an outro from our intro section. And then we're gonna from the outro of the introduction, which is going to, excuse me, gotta sneak our theme in there, sorry about that. That's pretty important. After we introduce the theme, we say it. We say that one sentence. We ask that one question, whatever it is. Then we transition using an outro, signaling the end of the introduction, and we segue from that outro into the first thematic point. We introduce the thematic point before we actually do the first thematic one. And then whatever that is, a page or two in the Junior Ranger guidebook, some, printed activity, or the first stop on the guided hike, or the first big room inside the cave, or what have you. Or maybe the first thematic point is outside the cave, and our outro from thematic point 1 and intro to thematic point 2 is getting to our first big room inside the cave, but we've already started the conversation. So, intro, content, whatever the thing is you're going to talk about or do or experience, show, encounter, content via the modality, and then outro. And that's gonna set us up for transitioning into thematic point 2, and then 3, and then 4, and then 5, and then, I don't feel like doing 6, so maybe I'll just kind of skip to 8 for today. We'll talk about Blastoise instead of Squirtle. Yeah, that sounds like more fun. Okay, 8 it is. All right, intro that. Talk about that particular Pokemon. Outro out of that. And then eventually you loop back to where you started. You never take folks on a hike and be like, well, okay, that's the end of the hike. Good luck. You take them back in a loop to where you started, back to their cars, back to the bathroom. And as you are traveling back, or once you get to the air, or what have you, then we are out of our thematic points. And our conclusion has a couple of very specific things to do, like the intro. There's not a lot of content in the intro, just the theme. There's not a lot of content in the conclusion, just the theme. So this is that short time that we have. Typically, the conclusion section is usually pretty short, 3 to 5 minutes. We restate the theme. Check in with people. How are we doing? What did you guys think about this? Did this sort of stir up anything in you? I'd love to hear some sense of what you are getting out of this, or what surprised you. You can ask open-ended questions like that, mostly appropriate in the conclusion. The conclusion is often where you tackle questions that folks have that came up along the way. If you don't have time or flexibility to answer those questions as they come up, which is usually more desirable, but this is your chance to say, does anybody have any questions for me before we finish up today? And then you wait in the uncomfortable silence of them looking at you and you looking at them. Because there are social norms, right? Most people won't immediately start saying, well, I have a question. It's more like I know the moment I speak up, somebody else is going to say a question. I don't want to look stupid. Nobody's saying anything, so maybe I should, what do you think? Oh, somebody else is saying. Right? It takes 10, 15, 20 seconds for that conversation to play out in everybody's head. They're all doing it. Okay? And that's okay. You want questions. That's a good thing. One of the most exciting questions you can get as an interpreter is, I want to do what you do. How do I do what you're doing? How do I get there? That's somebody who is so present that they're looking at changing the course of their professional lives. If a kid says this. My wife, for example, wanted to be a veterinarian since about the age of 5. She's a veterinarian. Other folks come to it much later. And it's a really cool thing for their veterinarian mentors to hear that person say, I think I want to be a veterinarian because of you. So when somebody asks you that question as an interpreter, how do I get a park ranger job here? That's a big compliment to you. You didn't scare them off. Didn't freak them out. Yeah? So we'll hold space for questions. And then the last thing we do in front of people in the conclusion is we break up with the participants, break up with the audience. We give them, especially the folks who don't necessarily automatically parse all nonverbal social signals easily, give them a clear sense of, this is the end, now it is over, I'm going away. But you do it very politely, very kindly, and in fact, you don't generally go away immediately. It's like, okay, now we're done, thank God. Instead, it's, okay, we're done. And I'm available if you have a cool story to tell that maybe I don't know about this topic. I would love to learn more about it because I'm super passionate about this. Okay? So, that's super important. Break up with the audience, signal the end of things, but you're not done. You still have somebody wandering up to you and sharing a meaningful story out of their life or their perspective on what you guys interpreted today. And then after that, we have all of the wrap-up stuff. So go recharge your battery however you need to. Get another glass of water, another high-protein snack. Stretch. Do a sun salutation to limber up your body and your mind again. Whatever that looks like for you. Okay? And we're going to be sort of filling in the blanks on this all the rest of the semester. There are a million different ways we can do it, through games and hikes and activities and other interactive staffed stuff and all of the non-staff formats like we saw on the first day of class. Things like card games. You can arrange your guidebooks. You can earn badges. That's cool. I showed you one of the worst reviewed comic books in the human experience. The last 800,000 years of modern hominids brought us through this. We survived somehow. It's fine. If you like Captain Planet or Swamp Thing, it's fine. If you ever saw the movie Fern Gully, not exactly like that at all. Whatever. Anyway, does this make sense? This is our outline, all right? This is the template. This is the rule set that we're going to use for everything other than the theme. And the theme figures in here twice, in the intro and the conclusion. It's that important. We start with that, and we end with it. It's the first bit of content and the very last bit of content in the intro and conclusion, respectively. Cool. Any questions about the interpretive outline? Okay. With a little bit of simple math, we can put the amount of time that we give to each of the remaining things, right? So pregame, usually 5 to 15 minutes, whatever that is, 3 to 15 minutes. The intro is usually, unless there's a more serious safety requirement like we'll see at Mammoth Cave, the intro is usually a couple of minutes as well. At Mammoth Cave, the intro is like half an hour or more because they tell you what they're going to tell you about the safety requirements and how many steps you're going to do and stuff like that at Mammoth Cave. And then they tell you how many steps you're going to do at Mammoth Cave and how long, how many hours it is if you have a heart attack or something like that to get you out. And then they recap what they told you about safety. They make sure that you can't miss it because it's that important, obviously. And And then all of the rest of the time, minus a couple of minutes for your conclusion, is more or less evenly divided across your thematic points. So if you have a game, for example, that you need a couple minutes to explain the rules and get it all sort of set up with everybody, and then a minute to ask for volunteers, and then a couple of minutes to play the first round of the game, and then kind of debrief with folks. Okay, is everybody sort of tracking with how this game works? All right, let's try round 2. But this time, let's have this other extra rule. There's this other hazard you have to avoid, or whatever, that's relevant to the game and relevant to the theme of the topic. So you can spend 15 minutes on that one thematic point by borrowing time from other thematic points that are much shorter, 2 to 3, 4, 5 minutes each. Cool. All right. So you don't have to invent any of this stuff. This is all a complete template. And I'll post a digital version on our course website that has a little bit more detail, some more reminders of some of the finer points. But this is the thing, okay? So our assignment for Monday is to take a crack at picking any one of your fully ready to go, fully baked themes and see if you can just daydream in one full outline of, let's start easy. 3 thematic points, plus the intro, plus the conclusion, which you don't really have to write anything, just copy paste the theme into the intro and conclusion, and all the rest is done. And come on Monday with one first draft, super janky is fine, outline. Cool? We'll go from there. All right. I'm a little bit over time, so I got to let you go. I apologize for that. I am around for questions, even though class is over. See what I did there? Yeah? Conclusion? Yeah? All right. What's up?
My name's Carson. I'm the one that joined a little bit late.
Welcome.
So is there a way that I can look up the assignment and get going?
Sure. Yeah, that's no problem at all.
What do I need to get to you?
What is your email address?